The goddess Inanna played a special role as the personal guardian deity of Sargon, who associated her with the Akkadian goddess Ishtar. We must delve into the ancient Akkadian pantheon to understand Ishtar's origins. In the early days, there were two prominent deities, Ilum and Attar. Ilum represented the morning star, a male god, while Attar represented the evening star, a female goddess. The Akkadians likely recognized that these two stars were closely related, the offspring of the Semitic moon god Sin. Evidence of Ishtar's presence can be found in Akkadian personal names in Sumer. For example, names such as Ishtar Umami, meaning my mother is Ishtar, and Enbi-Idar, meaning my fruit is Di Ishtar, demonstrate the connection. In the earliest Akkadian personal names, such as Ishtar Karadi, meaning Ishtar is my fighter, Ishtar was already recognized as a war goddess. As the morning and evening stars complemented each other, Ishtar, despite being a male name, could easily be identified with Inanna, a female name. The existence of a Mari temple dedicated to Inanna, Ishtar Man, further solidifies this association, and sometimes even names like Idar Muti, meaning Ishtar is my husband, were used, emphasizing the bisexuality attributed to Inanna Ishtar. Scholars have proposed various theories regarding Ishtar's etymology, but they have yet to be definitively proven. Joseph Plessis suggested in 1921 that the name may be related to the Greek word aster, meaning star, from the Indo-European language family. However, the connection between these two languages still needs to be verified. During the reign of Sargon, Inanna received her traditional iconography. She was depicted with a club and scimitar on her shoulders, symbolizing her assistance to the Akkadian kings in conquering neighboring lands. Her constant companion was a lion, an ancient cylinder seal attributed to Iku Parakum from the Akkadian period, portrays ritual actions involving the goddess. In the scene, Ishtar sits on a throne between two crossed lions while wearing a divine crown with 5 tiers of bull horns. Weapons protrude from both her shoulders, and a woman, possibly the queen, is shown pouring her a drink. Most depictions of Ishtar show her in profile, gazing directly into the viewer's eyes. Ishtar's significance continued under Sargon's grandson, Naram Sin, who worshipped her as Ishtar Anunitum. It remains unclear where Anunitum originated from, but since Naram Sin married an Elamite princess, it is speculated that she may have come from Elam, located east of the Zagros Mountains. In Akkadian, Ananantu means fight or combat, and was initially a name associated with Ishtar. Some scholars, like Seltz, suggest it means warrior Ishtar. Naram Sin considered Ishtar Anunitum his favorite goddess, attributing his military successes to her. In light of this epithet, he even referred to himself as her husband, Mu'ut Inanna Anunitum. While the rulers of Sumerian cities often presented themselves as the earthly husbands of the goddess, Naram Sin took a bolder step by proclaiming himself as a god toward the end of his life. Whether he actually participated in the sacred marriage ritual with Ishtar Anunitum is uncertain. However, his close relationship with her allowed him to claim divine status, especially after suppressing a massive revolt by Sumerian city-states. Naram Sin referred to himself as the god of his city, specifically Akkad, whose grandfather Sargon had declared the capital of his empire but lacked a city god. According to an inscription in northern Iraq, Naram Sin achieved victory in 9 military campaigns in a year, earning Ishtar's love. As a result, he was elevated to the status of Akkadian city god. As per the available text, the inhabitants of Akkad requested the gods of other towns to recognize Naram Sin as the city god of Akkad. The mighty gods promptly accepted the request for the Akkad dynasty monarch to become one with the Akkad god without hesitation. In Ulma, a dedicated temple was built in honor of Ishtar. According to Postgate, this ruler's divine aspirations must be understood in the context of the new political situation. At that time, the Akkad Empire was foreign to the people of other lands, and Naram Sin's rule would not have been accepted by them without divine approval. Consequently, in his texts, Naram Sin began using the sign D, representing Dingir or god, and referred to himself as the god of Akkad and the consort of Ishtar Anunitum. Naram Sin likely established a temple dedicated to Ishtar Anunitum in Akkad, as she played a crucial role in his significant victory. Naram Sin even incorporated the temple's name into his son's name, calling him faithful to Ulma. Due to the limited information available, it is challenging to draw definitive conclusions about kingship in the ancient world. In the 3rd millennium, the ties between kings and gods were exceptionally close, and they had no reservations about claiming to be the offspring or spouse of a goddess. Mesopotamian kings did not necessarily have to be divine, and rulers in Mari also referred to themselves as gods of the land. Therefore, declaring oneself as a god may appear reasonable under these circumstances. To impress the people, Naram Sin erected a victory stele. This stele commemorates his triumph over the Lulubi, a mountain tribe in the central Zagros region. The stele stands at a towering height of 2 meters and depicts Naram Sin ascending the steep slopes of the Zagros mountains, with the lifeless bodies of his enemies strewn along his path. He envisions the divine cosmos, represented by 2 shimmering stars in the sky. Naram Sin appointed his daughters as priestesses. Following Sargon's lead, who appointed Akkadian officials to supplant local rulers in the south, Naram Sin renamed his daughter Enheduanna as En, the Jewel of Heaven, or An. The Akkadian term for the priestess was Entum, but the Sumerian title En remained used in the south. The En priestess, as the female counterpart of the En ruler, may have held a position similar to the Sumerian high priestess known as Nin. Akkadian kings possibly used this Sumerian title to challenge the dominant position of Sumerian En rulers in the cities by appointing a female high priestess. From that point onward, Akkadian kings and their successors continued to appoint their daughters as high priestesses of the temple. At least 4 of Naram Sin's daughters received such appointments. Inscriptions on precious bowls found in Mari reveal that 2 of Naram Sin's daughters referred to themselves as priestesses. The pronunciation of the signs in Akkadian is unclear, but one daughter named Imani called herself the priestess of Amas, while another daughter named Mi Kibbar served as a priestess of an unknown god. A seal depicts a woman sitting on a stool with a footstool, adorned in a Kaunaki's mantle and wearing a thorny crown on her head, which was lost after its discovery. Her servant holds an object with an inscription, Naram Sin, king of the 4 quarters, Tutanapum Entum of Enlil, is your daughter. Another daughter, Tutanapum, was ordained as an En priestess of Enlil by Naram Sin in Nippur. Enheduanna, who succeeded Naram Sin's daughter as En priestess of Nana, held the official name Enmen Anna, meaning En, the crown of heaven. Various cylinder seals feature her name, and the temple's servants in Ur owned these seals. Naram Sin's name is accompanied by a divine determinative on these seals, as he had already been elevated to a divine status. Similarly, on the seal of Itupalim, a servant of Enmenana, the name of Naram Sin is accompanied by the Dingir sign. Naram Sin, the Anunnaki overlord and husband of Ishtar Anunitum. In 2002, Donald Hanson published a fragment of a stone bowl featuring the goddess Ishtar. It was rumored that a gold bowl was made using this mold fragment. In the depiction, Ishtar is seated on a throne-like structure atop a ziggurat. We are familiar with the crossed lion motif from images on cylinder seals, where the lions are positioned beneath the goddess. Next to Naram Sin, there is a simple camp stool. Naram Sin wears a divine crown and sits beside the goddess. While Ishtar has 4 ropes, symbolizing her divinity, Naram Sin only has 1. However, this single rope signifies his status as a deity, equal to Ishtar's. Worshippers never sit in front of a god, but always display humility, so Naram Sin's position in front of the goddess implies equality. Ishtar grasps Naram Sin's left wrist with her right hand, while holding onto the ropes that connect to the ring in Naram Sin's left hand. Ishtar is often depicted with ropes leading to the noses of 2 deities and 2 bound prisoners, symbolizing her control over enemies. Throughout the Akkadian dynasty's domain, Ishtar conveys that she is a war goddess. However, it is unfortunate that this fragment is likely a forgery. Its sudden appearance, unknown origin, and damaged state raise doubts about its authenticity. When acquiring antique objects, we must consider the possibility of forgeries, as with any item bought on the antique market. This unfortunate consequence arises due to the significant value of such artifacts to investors and collectors. For centuries, the ruling kings sought the support and protection of Ishtar. She bestowed upon them the divine right to govern their subjects and confirmed their positions. With her ring and staff, Ishtar controlled the king's enemies, and the staff represented the king's scepter, Gidru, a symbol of kingship since ancient times. A relief carving on a rock depicts Ishtar using a nose rope to control the enemy during the investiture of King Anu Bandini. However, as Anu Bandini is not mentioned in other inscriptions, dating the relief accurately is challenging. References to the kingdom of Lulubi, mentioned in cuneiform texts from ancient Iraq, date back to the 3rd millennium BCE. Therefore, the relief carving may have been created during the Ur-III dynasty. The relief, situated 16 meters above the ground near Sari Pol-e-Zahab, Sarpol, in the Diyala River valley of the Zagros Mountains, needs to be more legible. Nevertheless, the victory carved in enduring stone remains significant. Anu Bandini, resembling Naram Sin and following the Akkadian prototype, stands triumphantly on his victory stele. At the top of the relief, a star with 8 beams glimmers within a circle, symbolizing Ishtar. Anu Bandini is shown stepping on his prisoners of war, their hands bound behind their backs, the end of the Akkadian Empire. Despite its power, it could not avoid its inevitable fate. A worsening climate may have expedited the collapse of the Akkadian world after a few generations. Droughts in the harbor region and the drying up of the Gaga Hakra River are believed to have caused people to migrate away from those areas, affecting the Indus civilization around 1800 BC. Additionally, simmering tensions existed between the native elite and the figureheads installed by the Akkadian kings in the cities, indicating internal instability within the empire. While the defeated regions could align with the central administration if the Akkadian armies conquered foreign lands, it is more likely that subjugated cities gradually contributed to military campaigns and other bureaucratic tasks. Naram Sin marked the end of the Akkadian king's attempt to unify the cities under their rule. Around 2000 BC, during the 3rd dynasty of Ur, a Sumerian hymn was written that came to be known as the Curse of Agade. This powerful lamentation narrates the downfall of the Akkad Empire and provides a detailed account of the end of the Akkadian period. It reflects the biased perspective of the kings from that time, suggesting that the Sumerian principalities had always resisted the dominance of the Akkadian rulers. After the fall of Akkad, the kingdoms in the south chose to revive the Sumerian culture that existed before the reign of Sargon of Akkad. Although the ruling kings may have spoken Akkadian rather than Sumerian, written records played a vital role in preserving Sumerian history. However, the scarcity of written tablets from the time of Sargon means that most of our knowledge comes from the Ur-III dynasty and the Old Babylonian period. This limitation may lead to a biased understanding of the era, but we must rely on the available records, even if they were compiled by later rulers who held biased views but believed they were significant in world affairs. There is no doubt that the Curse of Agade was composed in the tablet schools of the king. The hymn explains the fall of Akkad as a divine punishment for Naram Sin's arrogant behavior. It is noteworthy that Naram Sin even worshipped himself as a god. However, this interpretation may be influenced by modern perspectives, as the rulers of the Ur-III dynasty also began to see themselves as divine, with their names being preceded by the divine determinative Dingir. The Curse of Agade narrates the southern Sumerian city's decline and the Akkad Empire's rise, presenting it as a significant event orchestrated by the gods. According to the hymn, Enlil, the head of the pantheon, chose to transfer kingship to Sargon after he had defeated Uruk and broken its power. As a result, Inanna, the goddess associated with Uruk, moved from there to Akkad, leaving Eanna, her temple, behind. Inanna's presence brought prosperity and success to Akkad. Many centuries later, people still remember Inanna's support for Sargon the Great's dynasty. The hymn describes Akkad, Sargon's capital, as a once magnificent paradise, starkly contrasting to the devastation and chaos that would later befall it. It portrays Inanna's actions as a youthful person building their first house, or a girl establishing her own kingdom. Inanna tirelessly worked to ensure well-stocked warehouses and prosperous cities throughout the land. The courtyards were filled with fresh water, and people enjoyed abundant feasts. Akkad thrived with the presence of exotic animals such as elephants, water buffalo and apes, brought from distant regions. In addition to precious metals like gold, silver, copper, tin and lapis lazuli, Inanna filled Akkad's stores with emmer wheat, silver and gold. She bestowed eloquence and wisdom upon older people, entertainment skills upon the young women, martial prowess upon the young men, and love for joy upon the children. The city resounded with the beats of tigi drums, while flutes and zamzam instruments played outside. The hymn also depicts the successful trade between Elam, Subir, and Meluha in the Indus Valley. The abundance of gifts offered to the goddess Inanna was so great that it overwhelmed her. It was truly a golden age. However, Naram Sin, Sargon's grandson and the mighty ruler of Akkad, decided to restore the temple of Enlil, known as the Ekur. However, Enlil refused to grant permission for this undertaking. As a result, Inanna withdrew her patronage and left her temple in Akkad, followed by all the other gods. Initially, Naram Sin attempted to appease Enlil by wearing mourning clothes and covering his chariot with reed mats for 7 years. Desperate and filled with despair, he interpreted negative omens as positive and proceeded to restore and demolish Enlil's temple. Despite even giving away his royal possessions, the signs remained unfavorable. Naram Sin, like a miner exploiting a silver mine, erected tall ladders against the temple and excavated the soil, shattering it like a mountain made of lapis lazuli. The temple submitted to him, bowing its head like a fallen soldier, and all foreign lands followed suit. As he dismantled the drainage system, the rain returned to the heavens. When he removed the upper lintel, the land became barren. Striking the gate of well-being with a pickaxe, he disrupted the prosperity of all foreign lands. He redirected grain from the gate from which grain is never diverted, causing food scarcity. He violently attacked the Ekur, revealing the hidden chambers that never saw daylight, and the Akkadians laid eyes on the sacred treasure chest of the gods. Naram Sin's Lahama deities in the temple were destroyed, and the Giguna shrine, a divine reed hut, was demolished, despite committing no sacrilege. Naram Sin stored his gold and silver in containers and his copper in leather bags, and the docks were filled with copper, resembling grain transportation. Silversmiths reshaped silver, jewelers reshaped precious stones, and smiths pounded copper while reshaping silver. As the ships departed Akkad's docks, the city's intelligence and possessions were taken. According to the hymn, Naram Sin dared not desecrate Enlil's temple without consequences. In response, the gods unleashed disasters to punish him. Nomads from the Zagros Mountains invaded the plains of Akkad, leaving the entire region in ruins. The hymn vividly describes their relentless onslaught, likening them to birds of prey descending upon their prey. Nothing escaped their grasp. No one could elude them. These unruly people possessed human intelligence, but exhibited the instincts of dogs and features resembling monkeys. Roads were no longer traveled by messengers, and rivers no longer carried courier boats. The Gutians forced cowherds to abandon their cows, and cries of anguish echoed from the walls of foreign cities. Prisoners were stationed as sentinels, and bandits patrolled the highways while the city gates of the land were shattered and scattered in the mud. Instead of cultivating gardens on the vast plains outside the cities, they were forced to establish them within the city walls. In those days, before the construction of cities, the fertile fields yielded no grain, the inundated lands produced no fish, irrigated orchards failed to yield syrup or wine, and the thick clouds refused to rain. A severe food shortage ensued. Those who perished on rooftops were left unburied, and people were afflicted by hunger, resorting to self-flagellation. Dogs would devour 2 men passing by Kayur, the magnificent location of Enlil, and 3 men if they ventured into its vicinity. People were bewildered, unable to differentiate between traitors and loyal individuals. Heroes met their demise alongside traitors, and the blood of the treacherous mingled with that of the innocent. The survivors of this catastrophe constructed a small sanctuary for Enlil, where the deeply saddened god found solace. The gods of other cities had also suffered greatly from the brutal invasion of the Gutians, and thus they cursed the city of Akkad for providing comfort to Enlil. They prophesied the destruction of the Giguna shrine within Enlil's temple, reducing it to dust, and predicted that the standing Lahama deities on the pillars would collapse like intoxicated young men. They foresaw the return of clay to the depths of the Abzu, receiving a curse from Enki. Grain would retreat to its furrow, timber would return to the forest, the cattle slaughterer would kill his wife, and the sheep butcher would slay his child. The people of Akkad would resort to living among grass and herbs, and individuals would consume the coatings of rooftops. Countless curses would befall them. The hymn concludes by praising Inanna for the destruction of Akkad, as she is the patron goddess of Ki and Uruk, both of which rebelled against Akkad's dominance. Having once supported the Akkadian dynasty, Inanna favored Ki and Uruk. Upon realizing that Akkad had vanished due to Enlil's punishment, the third dynasty of Ur solidified their claim as the rightful successors of Akkad. Interestingly, archaeologists have never discovered the physical city of Akkad. The god's curse was fulfilled, ensuring that Akkad would not be rebuilt. Instead, its ruins would be reclaimed by nature, covered in overgrown weeds, and the city would remain forever lost. Enheduanna, daughter of Sargon of Akkad, sings hymns dedicated to the goddess Inanna, adding to the enigmatic aura surrounding Inanna in the 3rd millennium. Although evidence of Inanna's presence can be found in various temples and inscriptions across Uruk, Mari, Nippur, and Ur, written texts from this period are scarce. However, 3 hymns attributed to Enheduanna stand out as exceptions. Enheduanna, appointed as an en-priestess by her father Sargon, is credited with composing several hymns, although it remains uncertain if she was the sole author. While it is said that she wrote 42 temple hymns for different cities in Mesopotamia, it is evident that she could not have composed all of them, as some mention kings from the 2nd millennium. Nonetheless, if this assumption holds true, Enheduanna likely penned the 3 hymns dedicated to Inanna. These hymns are significant for Inanna, as Enheduanna was not a priestess of Inanna, but of Nanna, the moon god. Enheduanna was precarious as the southern city-states challenged her father's authority. She had to defend her father's dynasty in an antagonistic environment. As a priestess, she served as the human consort of the moon god, but her true devotion lay with the national goddess Inanna rather than her celestial spouse, Nanna. King Sargon and Naram Sin regarded Inanna as their personal goddess, fostering a special connection with her. The power struggle between the kings of Akkad and the Sumerian rulers in the south is depicted in the hymns as a contest between Nanna, the moon god of Ur, and Inanna, the national goddess of Akkad. Inanna, previously depicted on cylinder seals, is portrayed for the first time as a war goddess. Although Enheduanna likely spoke Akkadian most of the time, she composed these hymns. In her address to Inanna, Enheduanna uses the Sumerian name Inanna, or an epithet such as Lady of the Greatest Heart, instead of the Semitic name Ishtar. This suggests that Enheduanna worshipped Ishtar in the Sumerian south rather than the Akkadian goddess Inanna. It is worth noting that Inanna is sometimes referred to as Enheduanna by another name, and eventually Inanna merged with this ancient indigenous goddess. The first hymn composed by Enheduanna describes Inanna's conquest of the mountain of Ebi. She is believed to refer back to this hymn in later works, indicating that the Ebi text was likely her initial composition. The mountain of Ebi corresponds to the steep ridge of Jebel Hamrin in present-day northeastern Iraq, stretching approximately 250 kilometers northwest. Though not remarkably tall, reaching a maximum height of 300 meters, the mountain range holds significance in a flat region like Mesopotamia. It symbolizes the mountain people inhabiting the area who resisted submitting to Inanna's authority. Enheduanna uses the name Inin instead of Inanna in this poem, possibly representing the Akkadian dynasty. In other instances, Enheduanna employs the logogram of Inanna, which should be interpreted as Inin. Before the Akkadian period, Inanna's warrior attributes were unknown. Inanna invokes a god of heaven to aid her in conquering the rebellious mountain of Ebi and asserting her dominance. Due to her recent arrival in the city, Inanna has been unable to displace An, the ancient and colorless god of Uruk, from his position. Inanna is often depicted as a calm, fatherly figure, attempting to temper her fiery temperament. A has fulfilled his role and is now an inactive god, while power has been assumed by Inanna and the moon god, representing the new generation of deities. One enduring aspect of Inanna's character is her fiery temperament, further emphasized in this poem. However, other facets of her nature also come to light. The hymn mentions the concept of me, Inanna's association with Venus in the sky, and her ability to unleash storms and tidal waves. The hymn commends Inanna's warrior qualities in its opening verse. She is depicted as a goddess adorned in intimidating armor, shining brighter than the Venus star, wielding blood-stained weapons. Her epithet is the destroyer of great lands. She effortlessly cleaves through shields and hurls them to the ground as she traverses the battlefield. The imagery of storms and floods is employed to illustrate her might. She is a strategic mastermind, revered lady. Her arrows and strength vanquish powerful territories, overpowering them. She roars like a lion in the heavens and on earth, conquering hostile lands like a wild bull. Her forehead exudes terror, emanating a fearsome radiance. Cornelian rosettes adorn her sacred throat, while lapis lazuli straps adorn her feet. This poem sheds light on the intentions behind its composition. It allows us to better understand the brutal wars waged by the Akkadian dynasty in Mesopotamia. Enheduanna employs the same propagandistic language used by the Akkadian regime, undoubtedly penning these verses to discourage those who dared to oppose the Akkads. Those who surrendered to Akkad did so unconditionally, yielding to the warrior goddess Inanna. In a direct address to her goddess, Enheduanna says, "As you rise to the heavens, my lady, as you become as majestic as the earth, maiden Inanna, as you traverse the heavens, radiating awe like the king of the sun, your brilliance and daylight grace the earth. As you tread the mountain ranges, casting rays upon the Girin plants with your luminosity, may you be praised upon the birth of the resplendent mountain, and the sacred place." Enheduanna describes how she walked in heaven and on earth, journeying through Elam, Subir, and the Lulubi mountains. However, upon reaching the heart of the mountains, the mountain of Ibi showed no reverence. Since Ibi refuses to humbly submit, Inanna instills fear and unleashes her wrath upon the lofty mountain range. The poem metaphorically refers to this act as Inanna's holy dance, or the sacred game of Inanna. War is depicted as Inanna's frenzy, the crack of her whip, and the game of the mighty goddess. This aspect of her character befits her role as the chief goddess of Akkad. She sharpens her lance, prepares her throwing stick and shield, and readies her arrows and stones for the quiver and sling. To set the forests ablaze and dry up the watercourses, she calls upon Gibil, the fire god. Ibi trembles and pays homage to Inanna, the goddess of thunder. Inanna declares that Ibi shall never be restored, shouting that it will forever remain cursed, unable to raise its head again after Enlil has frowned upon it. Next, Inanna visits An, the god of heaven, to present her case. Venus, the star, follows a path to the Gate of Wonder, possibly referring to the Milky Way, while donning her royal garment as evening descends, and warmly welcomes Inanna, referring to her as Father. She offers her prayers, makes an offering, and takes her rightful place in the heavens, and bestowed upon Inanna a powerful arsenal of weapons, enabling her to assist kings in their military campaigns and ensuring their strength to conquer lands that defied their authority. Inanna asks An, "How is it possible that the mountains of Ibi did not show me respect and did not humbly submit?" A responds compassionately, stating that the destruction of the mountain is all that Inanna desires. He questions what Inanna truly seeks. Inanna argues that the mountain of Ibi has brought terror upon the abode of the gods, spreading fear and ferocity throughout the land and radiating its terror across all places. Inanna declares that heaven is filled with arrogance. An, in contrast, paints a picture of Ibi as a paradisiacal land with fruit-laden gardens and flourishing vegetation. Magnificent trees leave an awe-inspiring impression, while lions roam plentifully beneath the canopy of trees and bright branches. Wild rams, stags, and wild bulls roam freely in abundance. Deer can be spotted among the cypress trees in the mountains. Despite the mountain's radiance, Maiden Inanna warns that she cannot withstand its terror and fear. Likens this peaceful image of Ibi to the opulent jewelry found in the royal cemetery of Ur, employing a stylistic device that also appears in the Curse of Akkad and hymns celebrating the defeat of foreign enemies. It was customary to initially emphasize the peacefulness and prosperity of the land destined for destruction. However, Inanna, driven by frenzy, remains undeterred by Anne's words. She opens her arsenal and pushes open the gate adorned with lapis lazuli. She initiates a glorious battle, conjuring a mighty storm. With potsherds, holy Inanna stirs up a raging tempest against Abi. Enheduanna precisely recounts how the catastrophe unfolded. Inanna confronts the mountain range, advancing step by step, sharpening both edges of her dagger. She seizes Abi's neck, tearing it apart like esparto grass. She plunges the dagger's teeth into the mountain's belly. Inanna's roar thunders through the land as rocks cascade down Abi's slopes. Serpents emerge from its crevices, spewing venom. Inanna curses the forests and dams the trees. Drought kills the oak trees, and fire engulfs the mountain's flanks, shrouding it in dense smoke. Inanna establishes her dominion over the mountain, doing as she pleases. Inanna directs her words to Ibi once again, unleashing her terrifying fury. The mountain's core is filled with the dread invoked by her father, Enlil, and she shouts at Ibi. Inanna proclaims the construction of a grand palace, the erection of a majestic throne, and the fortification of its foundation. The Kurgara cult performers are armed with prods and daggers, while the Gala cult performers are given Uban Lilies drums. Inanna has adorned the Pili, her devoted followers, with new headgear. Inanna extols her triumph over Ibi one final time. The hymn concludes with praises to Inanna for annihilating Ibi, and it is also a hymn of homage to Nisaba, the goddess of writing. These verses left a lasting impression on the listeners, and the tablet schools eagerly transcribed them. Through this hymn, the Akkadian dynasty sought to firmly communicate to all its adversaries that Inanna was not to be underestimated. It was a stern warning that she would ruthlessly crush any opposition, rendering resistance futile. The memory of Akkad would be forever intertwined with a message of terror.